My father handed me the eviction notice and said, "You have 48 hours to remove your belongings. Your sister now owns this house." I simply smiled and nodded. But when she entered that house, she realized she had made a huge mistake. "Hey, Reddit." My father didn't even glance at me as he set the papers on the kitchen table and said coldly, "You have 48 hours to remove your belongings. Your sister owns this house now." He didn't blink or hesitate. He just turned and walked away. I sat there, staring at the eviction notice, my fingers shaking around the edges. It felt unreal. The home I had grown up in, the one I helped restore after the storm, repainted, repaired, and maintained, wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to her. My sister Claire. Growing up, Claire and I were complete opposites. She was charismatic, self-assured, and loud. The type of person who could convince anyone of anything. I was reserved, diligent, the one who fixed what she broke and took the blame when she cried. Dad adored her. Mom used to say, "Claire just has a spark you don't." Nathan, that spark consumed everything it touched. When Mom passed away, the house became Dad's. He told us both that one day it would be split equally. I never doubted that until the day he changed the will. It was 2 weeks ago. Dad called me into his study and said, "You're doing well on your own, son. You don't need this house." "Claire does." "You mean she wants it?" I asked quietly. "She's planning to start a family. You can't live here forever." "I'm not," I replied. "But this was Mom's house. You're really giving it all to her." "Don't question my choice," he said sharply. "Be thankful. I'm allowing you to stay until the paper's clear." And in that moment, I knew it wasn't Claire's idea. It was his. Because no matter how grown I became, in his eyes, I was never the favorite. Now, sitting at the table with that eviction notice in front of me, I realized something. They didn't expect me to fight. They expected me to plead. But I didn't plead. I smiled and said, "All right, 48 hours it is." Dad looked surprised, almost suspicious. "You're just going to walk away?" "You made your choice," I replied calmly. "Now I'll make mine." He didn't answer, just nodded and left the room. For the next 2 days, I packed, not out of sadness, but with clarity. Every photo, every tool, every memory I had built in that house I took with me. Not because I wanted to cling to the past, but because I knew Claire wouldn't last long there. You see, that house wasn't just a home. It was labor. Old wiring, faulty pipes, hidden mold in the walls, things I had fixed, maintained, and kept from falling apart quietly and constantly. Without me, the house was a ticking time bomb. And I knew the moment she stepped in, she'd discover exactly what it took to keep it standing. When the 48 hours were over, I loaded the last box into my car. Dad stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching me like I was a stranger. "Where will you go?" he finally asked. "Somewhere that doesn't require fixing," I replied quietly. He frowned. "Don't be dramatic. You'll thank me one day." I just smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe you'll regret it." Claire arrived as I was leaving. Fresh manicure, expensive handbag, that same smug grin she had worn since childhood. "Oh, look who's finally moving out," she said mockingly. "I'll send you pictures once I redecorate." "You should probably call a plumber first," I said with a half smile. "Why?" "No reason. Just good luck, Claire." And I drove away, not angry, not bitter, just finished. It was late at night when I received the call. Unknown number, but I recognized the voice instantly. "Nathan, it's Claire." "What do you want?" I asked. Her voice trembled. "The house, there's water everywhere. The basement's flooded, the pipes burst, and the contractor said the foundation's cracked. I don't know what to do." "Didn't you call a plumber?" I asked calmly. "I tried. He said the whole system's corroded." He asked how it lasted this long, and then she stopped, her voice breaking. "Nathan, how did it last this long?" I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, fighting the urge to say, "I told you so." "Because I fixed it," I replied quietly. "For years, while you were busy taking credit for everything good in this family." She started crying softly. "I didn't know." "You didn't care to," I said. There was a long silence before she whispered, "Dad's gone too. He said it's my problem now." I sighed. "Then I guess it is." "Please," she pleaded. "Can you come fix it? I'll pay you." "No," I replied firmly. "You already paid for it, just not in the way you expected." She cried harder. "I didn't mean to take everything from you, Nathan." "But you did," I said softly. "And now you know what it feels like when something falls apart because you didn't appreciate who held it together." "Goodbye, Claire," I said finally and hung up. A week later, I found out the house was condemned. The damage was too extensive to repair. Claire moved into a rental apartment downtown. Dad went to live with an aunt, and for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. I bought a small cabin by the lake. Quiet, simple, meaningful. And every creak in the floor, every leak in the roof, I fixed myself. Not out of obligation, but out of pride. Because that house back then wasn't just walls. It was proof that I could hold things together. Even when my family tried to tear me apart, they thought evicting me would leave me with nothing. But all it did was teach me something they never learned. If you build something with love, it will always outlast those who try to take it from you. I thought that was the end until months later my father called, not to apologize, but with an offer I never anticipated. And this time I had to decide who truly deserved forgiveness. It had been 6 months since I left that house behind. 6 months of peace. No phone calls, no arguments, no guilt. Just quiet mornings by the lake, coffee in hand, watching sunlight dance across the water. Then one evening, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. Dad. I stared at it for a long moment before answering. Hello, Nathan, his voice said, older, softer, thinner. I need to see you. I hesitated. Why? It's about your sister and the house. My stomach tightened. I almost hung up, but something in his tone stopped me. It wasn't anger. It was regret. I met him the next morning at a small cafe near town. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders slumped, eyes weary. When I sat down, he didn't waste time. Claire's in trouble, he said. Financially, emotionally, everything. That's not my concern, I replied quietly. I know, he nodded. But I'm not here to discuss her. I'm here to talk about you. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a legal document, the deed to the house. It's yours now, he said softly. I transferred it back to you. I froze. Why? He sighed deeply. Because I finally realized what I did. I gave everything to the one who took and nothing to the one who gave. You don't have to do this, I said. I do, he replied. The house is worthless now, flooded, damaged beyond repair. But maybe, just maybe this is my way of starting over. We sat there in silence for a while. The man who had once thrown me out of my home now couldn't even meet my gaze. I was proud of you, Nathan, he finally said. Always was. I just didn't know how to show it. Your sister was easy to love. You were easy to rely on. And I mistook that for strength. His words hit harder than I expected. Because for years, I dreamed of hearing something like that. But now that I did, it didn't fix everything. You broke me, Dad, I said quietly. You made me feel like no matter what I did, I'd never be enough. I know, he whispered. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make that right. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This, he said, is an offer, a partnership. I'm selling what's left of the land where that house stood. Developers want to rebuild, but they asked if I knew anyone reliable enough to oversee the restoration. I gave them your name. I blinked. You're offering me the job. You're the only one I trust with it. It took me a moment to respond. Why would I want to rebuild the same house you kicked me out of? He smiled sadly because it's not about rebuilding a house. It's about rebuilding us. I didn't answer right away. The logical part of me said no. Walk away. Protect your peace. But another part, the part that still remembered being that boy painting the walls beside him, wanted to say yes. Weeks later, I agreed. Not for him, but for myself. I took the job. Supervised the new build. Every brick, every wall, every nail, I made sure it was stronger, cleaner, more honest than before. And somewhere between the dust and blueprints, something unexpected happened. Dad started showing up, not to command, not to control, just to help. He'd bring coffee, tools, stories about Mom, and sometimes we'd just work in silence. 2 men trying to fix more than wood and stone. After 3 months, the house stood completed. New walls, new windows, but the same view from the porch Mom used to love. On the last day, Dad handed me a small box. Inside was Mom's old locket. She wanted you to have it, he said quietly. I kept it because I thought Claire needed it more, but now I see. She doesn't understand what things like this mean. You do. I closed the box slowly, my chest tight. Thank you, Dad. He nodded. Thank you, son. We stood there for a long while in silence, just listening to the wind rustle through the trees. A year later, the house sold for nearly double its projected value. I invested part of it into my business and used the rest to buy Dad a small apartment closer to me. He didn't argue, didn't resist. He just said, I'm proud of you, Nathan. You did what I couldn't. What's that? I asked. Turn pain into purpose. And that's when I realized he was right. Because forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It redeems what's left. The man who once gave away my home ended up giving me back something far more valuable. Peace. When people ask me why I smiled that day when he told me I had 48 hours to get out, I tell them this, because I already knew. You can take someone's house, but you can never take away the person who built it. He was evicted from his childhood home, but years later, he didn't rebuild it for revenge. He rebuilt it for redemption. Because sometimes the only way to truly win is to stop fighting and start healing.